The state legislative session in Salem. Hide your children, hide your pets,
hide your wallet.
That's right, and your wallet.
Hide your checkbook. Good gosh.
No kidding. They're only getting started. All I know is that whatever they're doing won't probably solve any problems, but it will cost a lot more. So stay tuned on that. We will, by the way, later in this show, closer to about 6:30, we expect to have Senator Lynn Findley, who has a very interesting bill that is aimed at banning the local natural gas bans here in Oregon. So we're going to talk to him about that. That just broke yesterday. But with us now, first of all, I got my lovely co-host, David Darnell. Mr. Darnell, good evening. And we have a very special guest here with us this evening. And he is let me read straight from the description. He is president of Salem Aviation Fueling and the chair of Fly Salem Steering Committee. This is Brent DeHart. We both know Brent, actually, from also days as a talk show host on KYKN with a friend of mine, Dave Bourne. And welcome to the show, Brent. We've got quite a story to tell, don't we?
Oh, yeah, it's been quite a road, and big culmination last week with the city council giving their green light and some money, frankly, to help move closer to having commercial airline flights in Salem. And,
just in a nutshell, the value proposition of having commercial air service resume, which I think it hasn't been operating, from things I read, on a regular basis since 1980. Right. That was when United Airlines was in. And then there's been a couple of attempts since then to try to get it going. But it looks like this is a very serious effort. Right. And you've been part of this for a number of years. Correct.
Yeah, running on 5 years now of recruitment. A lot of volunteers. I'm the chair because I raised my hand and I volunteer. But really, it's anchored. The Fly Salem effort is anchored by the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce and Travel Salem. I want to thank the leadership of those boards, SEDCOR as well. So you have, and in SEDCOR, Kevin, we got to point out that SEDCOR and Travel Salem both get paid by the city of Salem to promote tourism and economic development, which commercial air service is right in their wheelhouse. So thank you, City Council, for being consistent in that regard. Your question, 1980 was before President Reagan what's the word here?
Deregulated, I think.
Thank you. Right? Deregulated. And frankly, they were forcing United to come here with 727s at a loss. And so the deregulation happened. And so that service stopped. We were too young. I mean, that time our population was like 79,000, 89,000 maybe. And some of our detractors try to draw a parallel like this failed in 1980 and forgetting most of the people they're talking to weren't born then. And then we didn't really get regular service from Salem to anywhere until about 2007 and 8. And we had regular 2 flights a day to Delta's hub in Salt Lake City. And that did really well. It is a common misperception that it didn't work because we lost our service just prior to the Great Recession. But really, it had to do with, we all remember when the traders jacked the price of fuel from $40 a barrel to $145 a barrel.
Yeah.
And when that happened, scores of communities lost their service. It had nothing to do with Salem filling planes. So to call that a failed experiment is definitely misinformation. We did great with Delta. And if it weren't out for the Great Recession, we probably would have turned around and tried again right then.
I think when you mentioned about some of these folks not being born in 1980, I think a lot of the opponents must have been born yesterday because they don't seem to understand the value proposition, nor do they seem to understand their own talking points that they've been delivering about claiming that this is bad for the city. But we know that the Salem City Council, they've had moments where they have gone one way on issues. Sometimes they've gone the other. I think there was you mentioned to me when we spoke about it last week, a river crossing that they were, that apparently would have caused more traffic or something. And I always like to say that that's the old wet sidewalks cause rain theory that you hear from people on the radical left. But it did get killed. But you guys flipped it this time. You got in front of that city council and everybody got lined up and it was a 9-0 vote. Is that correct?
Yeah, all the votes that we needed in the last, say, 10 months have been 8-1, 8-0, 9-0, with the departure of one city councilor who, hey, is now a state legislator. We've had unanimous support from the city council. We've had less luck getting the city staff to jump on board and help us, but the city council has been very supportive, and we need to acknowledge that because, Kevin, they were not some of the friends of things we wanted to do, like the river crossing, but Mayor Hoy has taken a lot of leadership here, and he's taken some gruff from people in the same political spectrum. Vanessa Nordyke, who sits in my former city council seat in Ward 7, she also has shown great leadership, put in extra hours, and they're carrying the water, really, and taking a political risk using city funds to help enable us to get this.
Yeah, I think to put it in a context, there's at least a slight majority, probably progressive leaning in the city council at this point in time, but they actually managed to find a pro-business approach to this, and so some of the critics and the media, which likes to highlight some of these arguments without context, I don't know. That's my impression. I was reading through the coverage, and they made this group 350 Salem. And these are, by the way, 350 is like a franchise operation of leftist climate activists who do this for all kinds of reasons, not just commercial aviation, but they're behind some of these natural gas ban things that they're doing. They were against the river crossing, correct, in Salem. And so 350 Salem, there's a 350 Corvallis, there's a 350 Bend. But they got 111 signatures, which in a city this size is just not a lot. But they were saying, didn't they, that this is just a big subsidy from the city of Salem. And suddenly the people that are apparently going to control the weather by fighting against climate change, they are really concerned about how taxpayer money is being spent. Very concerned about it, which is amazing to me after $1 trillion of Green New Deal spending that's been flying around. But this is about 2.3, 2.4 million, somewhere in there, of to renovate a terminal and hire some employees for the airport, which is a municipal airport, correct?
Yeah, the city of Salem owns the airport. Back in the 70s, it had its own, it's more of like a Port of Portland authority, and it's an airport authority, and it did eventually folded it into the city of Salem. So it's a department within a department, which is really not appropriate for a facility that's so important to the region, even without commercial air service. And it's like 650 acres that the National Guard uses, the U.S. Army uses, firefighters use, Garmin uses. Of course, business interests use. They track invasive species from the airport. They do mapping. They do firefighter spotting and fighting. They Christmas tree harvesting. It goes on. And they save lives with Life Flight. It's listed as this top 2 airports for what they call resiliency, which mean when everything hits the fan and they're going to need emergencies, supplies after a natural disaster. All of that, and they've got it within a department. So we like that its awareness is being raised at this point because of commercial service, but the airport is going to be an amazing, amazing asset for the whole entire Mid-Valley. You think about it, Kevin, what is Reno Tahoe without an airport?
Oh, yeah.
Right? What's Palm Springs if it doesn't have an airport to it? It's almost like you mentioned Bourne yesterday, but it's almost like people have never lived in an area that had a vibrant regional airport and what it brings to that region in terms of economic development, visitors, businesses willing to locate, conferences to come, on and on and on. Businesses are surrounding airports. You ever seen an airport in the middle of nowhere that wasn't surrounded by businesses? So the economic development aspect, which is why I dove in to begin with, is huge. It's enormous. I can't wait for 10 years after service starts. I don't want anybody to be underwhelmed by our first service because we need to be looking at 5 and 10 years. Look at it 5 and 10 years. Let's get the first service. Let's get the snowball rolling downhill.
Well, and even some of the progressive counselors seem to be saying, look, this is going to be a big boom for the economy in the area, as well as a convenience for people. But so 350 Salem seemed to be saying that they believe that this is bad for climate change. But then I was trying to imagine, okay, people are still going to fly, right? Including many of the people in 350 Salem, I'm sure, have gotten on a plane or two in their time. They probably don't walk or ride bicycles across country to get to places. And they said it would be bad. But then what if you make all those people that are going to fly anyway get into cars? If all you care about is CO2, and you make all those people get into cars and go through 2 hours of heavy traffic up to the Portland International Airport. You have to arrive, a couple hours early to make sure you get on that flight. So you can get on a plane to fly, let's say to Seattle for 45 minutes. Which one is emitting more carbon dioxide to begin with? It's like their talking points don't even work.
Yeah, they don't. And there's a lot of false arguments going around, like it failed before and why would it do now? As if Salem in the Mid-Valley is the same as it was in 1980 or even 15 years ago. Yeah. But if a 737 leaves from Salem and flies to the LA basin or flies from Portland, all we're going to do is as you were saying, I'll take the cars off the road. It's about 135 miles round trip for a lot of us. And we're going to take that car off the road. So less congestion, less fuel, less fossil fuels. You're going to sit in a 737. It's not fly or not fly, because people are still going to do Disneyland. They're going to go to college. They're going to visit their relatives, right? They're going to go to conferences. People are still going to fly. The question is, do they get in a car and drive before they fly or not? So we had some pretty good data, which I want to say I have to call them out because I reached out to 350 Salem to see if they would talk to me and I could give them some of the data instead of just pontificating on, buzzwords, and they did not respond. So with the aircraft, we hope to see before Memorial Day, it's a 737-700. Okay, so
wow.
Are you going to fly? Yeah. You're going to fly 737 out of Portland or out of Salem. The carbon footprint's kind of the same. Another airline we tried to recruit, it would have been a 40% reduction. Kevin, it would have been a reduction in the carbon footprint because of the new aircraft. And there was a third aircraft possibility. The smaller ones, they don't really pencil out if you're really going to calculate carbon. You get most of it offset because of taking the cars off the road, but not entirely. So, somebody, I don't know if they were facetious in the comments, but electric aircraft are coming. This is really not fantasy. There's scores of companies all over the world developing them. We're going to see them in small scales. We're not going to see them in airliners for 20, 30 years. And honestly, they're not going to be electric. They're going to be hydrogen. But I know we'll be able to fly to Bend in an electric aircraft. I bet, the technology will probably exist today. Regulations and getting to the market, 5 to 10 year window. So that's coming. Aviation is going to electrify to a certain extent. They're going to move to hydrogen at some pace or other. But right now, people are going to fly. Let's let them fly to Salem in the state capital.
It really feels like there's this is an exercise in getting government to get out of the way of business getting this done, which is a constant battle, isn't it? I mean, I know there's a role because they own the airport. But on the other hand, why would they want to stand in the way of what they used to call progress? I don't know what progressive really means anymore, but progress. Because I always imagined before we got to the flying car stage of the future, we would go from the big airport hub and spoke, people driving in traffic all the time. We'd have this middle stage where you could drive 10 minutes and get on a plane and go someplace really fast, not wait forever. And this feels like that. You just mentioned all these things that could come in the future, right? Regulations. It's going to be the government that's going to slow down those things from happening, if anything. And then they're going to blame probably us for not adopting it fast enough.
Yeah, well, we have been recruiting for 5 years. And frankly, I don't know if they didn't think we were going to be successful or what, but the city was not ready. So they had not spent the money for the investments that we needed. And now we're in a huge time crunch to get the terminal ready. for the new TSA equipment that was different than it was 15 years ago. We think they can make it. There are a couple of other hurdles in terms of having a security plan that's adequate at the Salem airport. There's no expansion necessary. Somebody was talking about that in the chat, but we don't need an expansion. All we need to do is accommodate TSA's equipment, and we screen passengers. Our runway is longer than the runway at Orange County, folks.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's about 100 feet longer than Orange County. Absolutely, we can take 737 and Airbus. We can't do a 747 kind of size. But the thing most of us fly up and down the West Coast in, Salem can accommodate that. And the terminal, we'd all like to see it expanded a little bit on its own footprint and expand that for better passenger experience. And that's going to be the next step. And hopefully the city council realizes that aviation activity will generate aviation dollars in addition to the external money it creates in the economy. So I'm pretty confident that they can raise enough in fees and rents and things that aviation actually does cost the city. It should raise its own money. What the city council did right now, this is the way I describe it to the mayor. I said, hey, this is a revenue generator. You spend money on the homeless, spend money on bike paths, you spend money on affordable housing, you spend money on parks, spending money on libraries. None of it generates money, but the airport will generate money. I need you to fill this generator with cash, with gasoline. I hate to use gasoline, right? I need you to give this revenue generator its first tank of gas. And I think in a few years, you're really going to see a lot more revenue coming out of the airport because, cities can be cash cow. Airports can be cash cows for regions.
People will like it. Regional airports are very convenient. I routinely fly out of Medford, and it's small. It's I don't know if it might be 200 feet from my car door to the gate.
Yeah.
And there's the flights out, flights out to the major hubs, 4 or 5 of them every morning that I'm aware of. You can get anywhere in the country, from Medford. It's a city of about half the population of Salem. I think Salem's about 180,000 people now. Salem's about 80. And it's just, I would much prefer that. I would, if I still lived in Hubbard, I would go to Salem and not go to PDX.
Yeah, and Kevin, to your point with 350 Salem, I looked at their petition. It's full of opinions. Like, we don't need this. Like, yeah, but a lot of people think that we don't need 2 new library branches, right, in the 2020s. But the city is looking to provide them with your tax. But it's one of those, just because you want to take the shuttle to PDX doesn't mean the community shouldn't have them. They use the word subsidy. Really, is it subsidizing when they build new sidewalks? Is it subsidizing when they develop a park? It's just infrastructure that the city owns. Is it subsidizing?
Right.
It's like, this is their asset. They're putting in infrastructure. We're not going to save money on tickets because the city, put in new windows. This is their building. It's their parts. They're putting in infrastructure, just like they do for any number of other departments, like the police building, right? Like fire trucks. Is it subsidizing the person that calls 911 to buy a new fire truck? I just don't understand. Well, they like to say it because it sounds like they're attacking rich people. They say poor people don't take planes, and therefore it doesn't pass an equity lens. Like, poor people demographically don't play as much tennis. So should we take the tennis courts out of the parks? Some of these things are not even arguments to me. It's like, yeah. So if 100% of the population doesn't utilize them, then the city should not provide them. Well, you would not then have libraries. I don't use the library, but I like the asset. I like a city having a municipal library. That's fine with me, even if I don't use it. Even if I never call 911, I'll pay my taxes to have that capability. It's just, I don't know. They're trying to do a class warfare here. They even said in the first sentence of the petition, Kevin, that this is about well-heeled business interests. Well,
so poor people should try to find a bus to PDX, right?
The irony is the carrier that's going to come is an ultra-low-cost carrier. Councilor Jose Gonzalez, who serves on city council right now. So this is really important to his lower income demographic. A lot of them have family in Southern California, and they want to be able to afford to go. And it's ridiculous. We've got letters from Silverton and Dallas and Independence and Kaiser and Staten and all over the place. We're from Western Oregon University, from Corbin, from Willamette, from Garmin, from the hospital. This is not 15 people. This is not the chamber. It's not Travel Center. It's not a well-heeled business interest. This the entire region wants it. And 11 people don't.
Yeah. And they do tend to get outsized coverage in the media. Politicians that tend to align with them tend to fear them when they cross them a bit, which gives them outsized influence. But this is a great lesson in what needs to be done in every city and county in the state, is that the people actually have to speak up. They can't assume that their affairs are just being well handled when a small, very loud group comes in and dominates discussions and sort of terrorizes people a little bit. I mean, I know that up in Portland, we actually have real political terrorists who, like to go and assault people in the streets. But there's different groups that fall along the spectrum, but they certainly like people to be fearful of the influence they have. And they also, I think they have these sessions. They must have people whose only job it is to generate superfluous, nonsensical talking points that they think someone might believe. It's like, what if we said this? And then they say this crazy stuff, and it doesn't have to, it can be completely non sequiturs, as long as someone actually thinks that it might be a scary talking point for them. And you guys fought it through. You fought it through.
We did. And, I got to give credit where it's deserved. And Mayor Chris Hoy, he came out of that progressive bloc, and he acknowledged this is contrary to what we've been saying. This is contrary to climate change and our goals, but it's still important, and we'll find other ways to offset it. And then all the councilors said their piece about, well, this is why I'm voting this way, so they can apologize a little bit. But, that takes some guts. And that takes some leadership. He actually said in the city council meeting, Salem's becoming a big town. From a big town to a small city, we're in transition, and it's time for Salem to grow up. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. And this is important, as he said. So some good leadership coming out of the city council, considering that they had to overcome their own voting bloc, folks, right? And they had to overcome a staff that was reticent to get on board, even though we in the private sector, folks, we funded the bill for this. We got a state grant. We've got a federal grant. The city did not do this. This was Fly Salem's an ad hoc community. And frankly, when I go to conventions, I'm sitting in a room where there's 200 to 300 communities and airport owners all trying to get what we just got. And the competition's fierce. So we accomplished it without the city's help. And now we're grateful the city's finally going to get terminal improvements so that we can actually start the flights. And when the flights are full, then we can ask for more money because we'll have more credibility, and we'll ask for expansions and things like that.
That's how it should be, right? That's how it should be. By the way, I just want to make sure I mention to folks who want to know more about this, that they can go to the Fly Salem website, which is flysle.com. That's flysle.com. And continue to follow developments, because we know that the battle's really never over, right? You're going to have people that are going to try to log roll and slow it down, even though you've come over a huge hurdle very recently. And I know that there, by the way, we're talking to folks all over the state here, and there are people in other cities that are trying to see if they can accomplish the same thing. And this is a real inspiration to them. And they're fighting some of the same groups that are regressing and trying to prevent an economy from having a good, strong, viable commercial sector. Wouldn't that be great if Salem had something else besides the state government as its major businesses? That could happen, couldn't it?
Yeah, and Travel Salem's chomping at the bit to market it. So the people in the desert want to come up and go fly fishing or go to the coast or taste wine. Anyone? The wine industry thinks this would be the greatest thing to keep money out of the metro area and into the Mid-Valley for the tourism dollars, from Silver Falls to the Oregon Garden to whitewater rafting. history tours, wine. Did I mention wine? Travel Salem can't wait to market, because we all think about us going to LA or us going to Phoenix or Vegas. Me too, going to a Giants game in San Francisco, right? And affordably. But it's also about bringing tourism and conferences and businesses willing to locate, because we know we've lost opportunities to get businesses located here because we're too far from commercial service.
Yeah. That's really that's well said. And I think this is the kind of thing that we wanted to bring to folks, but also let them know that when they hear one of these battles going on and somebody is talking about climate lenses and equity lenses and all this kind of stuff, start looking past the silly talking points and start backing the people who actually want to have a private economy that can grow.
So the good news is this new carrier, relatively new carrier, they want to start 2 flights a week to the LA area and the San Francisco area starting before Memorial Day, and then add a couple flights a week to Phoenix and Las Vegas by the end of next year. And frankly, that's the snowball. I mean, we fill those planes, then what we want is to get on a major carrier, and when this started in the business community, we want a major carrier to go to a major hub. So we want to go LAX, San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, some one of those, to attach to the network so that we can connect all over the world, one stop from Salem. That's still going to be our goal, but that is 2 to 3 years out because of the pilot shortage. In the meantime, we can establish ourselves more so as a market with this first initial, more family and friends, tourism and travel type carrier, low cost carrier, to our top 4 locations.
Wow, that's really good. And
Thank you, Lori Shaw. Thank you, Lori Shaw, for coming. Yeah, we won't have to hit the toll on our way to PDX 4 hours before our flight, right?
Yeah.
Good luck getting someone to drop you off there and come pick you up.
Half a day, David, right? We came to the airport, PDX. I don't think so. You'll be Ubering to Salem, or you'll be parking. Yes, there is. It's about 150 spaces in Salem. I'm a proponent to double that right away, because frankly, the revenue it'll generate for the airport will pay it back in just a couple of years.
I mean, when I go to Medford, that's what I do. I just pay for, I'm gone 4 or 5 days. I mean, it costs me $25-$30, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's I just love regional airports. I mean, it's so nice to get there 45 minutes before my plane leaves, and I can look in the window there and go, oh yeah, TSA looks like it's about 2 minutes.
Yeah. A lot of people are enjoying it these days in a small airport experience. And that will be what we are when we start with our facility, and then we'll expand. But there'll be one flight. You'll be fighting with passengers from one flight, not 50 flights leaving out of PDX at the same time, right? So a lot of things have changed since the pandemic and the small airport experience. We think we're going to draw down from Wilsonville, really, right? All the way to the coast, Corvallis.
Well, yeah. I mean, I spent the majority of my adult life in Hubbard, and it's 22 miles from Salem and it's 22 miles from Portland. And if I could fly out of Salem, I would choose Salem. I mean, it's just so much more convenient. And I don't really know what the pricing difference is. I've had people tell me, if you fly out of Medford, you're going to pay a lot more. Well, what's my time worth? It's a 10-hour round trip from where I live in southwestern Oregon to PDX and back.
Well, I think we have kind of gotten to the point in the show where we're going to be able to have Senator Lynn Findley join us. And he is going to tell us about it's kind of a small world, because he's talking about the natural gas bans that have been going on in the state, and it's kind of the same group that's been advancing a lot of these things. So I'm going to go ahead and bring good Senator in. He's back from a committee hearing, and let me go ahead and add him in here. There we go. Senator, welcome to the captive audience. Thank you for joining us here.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you. And we've got, of course, David Darnell, regular co-host with me on Captive Audience, and Brent DeHart, who was just telling us about the big success that they've had with getting Fly Salem and getting service into and out of that airport that's going to start hopefully in May. So It would be good. You spend a fair amount of time in Salem too, and I'm sure from time to time you might even find yourself using this service, especially as it grows.
Well, I'll tell you, it takes me about 6.5 hours to drive here from my house. And I live in Eastern Oregon. I can drive to Boise, get there 2 hours early, fly to Portland, navigate PDX, and get to Salem. And it takes about 6.5 hours to do that. So I would like to see some other options. So.
There we go. Choice. Actually, and that's at the heart of the Senate bill that caught my attention, and we got in touch yesterday about this. It's Senate Bill 647, and there are people in the state that are. I've been involved with what's going on in Eugene. There's been an effort in Milwaukee, and there's other towns on their list, Bend, Corvallis, etc., where they are passing local bans on natural gas hookups in new dwellings. They usually start with something that doesn't seem like it matters, like something above 3 stories. And then they change it. And then a few months later, the one in Eugene that they're considering is 3 stories and under, as well as new residential dwellings. And we know there's a whole progression. They plan to continue passing these until one day you're finding yourself being forced, when you sell your home, to add that conversion to electric to the cost of your house. And there's a lot of restaurants that are super not happy with this idea at all.
I'll tell you, you heard the old saying, you get your toe in the door. I consider this to be that. I mean, first of all, we shouldn't have a bifurcated building code where it's dependent on the area you're in on what the codes are to build it. We have a statewide building code. We have a pretty good, robust code. And it's good because it's not bifurcated throughout, so you don't have to go look at your local jurisdiction to see what sidings you have to put on. But more importantly, it's very short-sighted. There is not enough electricity available, produced, and able to be moved without in the transmission system that's not there to support this. It's just not there. And to go out and make these rules is without the ability to really to switch it over is ludicrous. I call it the 5 o'clock news cycle. The people go stand in front and say on the 5 o'clock news says, "Look at all the good things we've done." Well, it can't be done. In all practicality, can't be done. There was an article on the news about a month ago when I was up here on the Portland news about how the Portland school district has said, "Yeah, we're going to eliminate natural gas in this," but yet they just remodel a building and they put natural gas in it. They broke their own rules. So what's the sense in having a rule? So what I'm saying is that we should have a standard building code throughout the state, and it needs to make sense. Now, if we had all the electricity we could ever get and need, and we had the transmission to move it, then I'd say let's have a conversation about it. We're a long ways away from that, and I just think this is a dumb thing from doing it. Now, on the other side, I'm a huge local control person. I believe in local control. The best decisions are made locally. But the problem is local units make these decisions without looking at all the facts behind it. When Eugene can say, we're going to eliminate this source of heat, we're going to convert to electricity, they don't have any control, or they can't drive and direct the grid and how much power is available to them. So they're going to affect other people in the state, because the power company is going to try to move power towards Eugene. Last summer I was up here in July, where it was 105 degrees. They had rolling brownouts in Tigard because they didn't have enough power to run all the air conditioning. So, yeah, I think it's extremely short-sighted. I kind of rambled on a little bit, but I'm pretty cranky that we just passed dumb laws that are not feasible and not practical, and they're absolutely not viable to be done.
Well, it's so the Senate bill 647 is the catch line or the summary says prevents local governments from prohibiting natural gas use in or availability for new or existing residential or commercial buildings, which is exactly what they're trying to do right now, is pass bans like that.
That's exactly right.
And it's sending panic through different communities. And the thing that stood out in Eugene is, in Eugene, 70% of Eugene residents opposed the ban. 80% of small businesses, and a lot of them are restaurants, Brent actually posted in some of the comments that we have here and during the show. and the food processing industry, because
Huge.
they actually need gas for doing that as well. There's a whole variety of industries that could be dramatically impacted by this.
Yep. These people that dream some of these things up, they don't look at the unintended consequences. I mean, the restaurant industry, the food processing industry, all of those. So if they don't have the natural gas, the technology is not there for power to support some of those instant heats and those issues that's required. And there's just not enough grid out there. I mean, it's just short-sighted when communities say, for the ability to walk around and say, look how green we are, we're doing all the right green things, when in all honesty, they're not doing very well at all. So
No,
you know,
and I think, isn't it also the case that when they have not only, they're trying to force a greater burden on the electrical grid than it can handle. We saw in California during they had a heat wave, and at the same time that they were encouraging people to buy electric vehicles, they said, by the way, don't plug them in because they don't have electricity.
How does that work? Yeah, don't plug in your rig tonight because we're a little low on power. So how are you going to get to work the next day?
Yeah.
So it's just it's not well thought out, and it's nonsensical, and it just frustrates the heck out of me that we continue to do that. I mean, we passed legislation here that is absolutely doesn't have a chance at all of happening because none of the pre-work has been done. We need to do it right.
What should the expectation people have of that the bill will get some attention? I know it's already driving some media attention, and I think
it is, and I'll tell you, that's what we need. I mean, sometimes some of my colleagues from across the aisle don't like to pass and to hear some of these things, because when they get 50 or 75 people out in the audience wants to talk in support of a measure, they don't like that. So the best way to get a hearing is for people to let their legislators know this is a good bill, and this needs to get a public hearing, and it needs to get a work session. We need to put some stability in the grid.
Brent,
Senator,
did you have a question there?
Yeah, quick question. Senators, is the other side of the aisle having problems because no matter where you are on the political spectrum, people like natural gas. People want it in their homes, even though no matter how progressive or liberal or conservative they are. And isn't public sentiment against this? So there's not.
I think it is. I mean, now in the heart of some of our most urban areas, there's a strong belief that this is a good idea, but when you look at the ability to implement it, it's not. I mean, and I'll tell you, I was a city manager several years ago before I came to the legislature. We had a program called Residential Rehab Program, where we got $400,000 and we shared it between two other cities nearby, and we helped low-income housed folks update their home and make it more efficient, put in windows or heating systems or whatever. And we got $400,000 for a 2-year period, and we never could spend it all because people didn't want the state coming in and tell them how to do it and then carry the mortgage or the lien on their property afterwards. So how's low-income folks going to convert their house to electric? They say, well, we'll just put in heat pumps. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but a lot of these places, they don't have a duct system. They don't have a furnace system. So you're going to have to redo the house, and people they can't afford it. They can't do it. And like you said, so when they sell it to sell, it's got to be completed perhaps. So that's, it detracts from their value. I just think it's a terrible idea.
It is a terrible idea. We did it in the 70s, if I remember correctly. There was a huge push to electrify everything. The new electric home, the home of the future, felt like I was at Disneyland, looking at the house of the future. And then people realized how expensive it was to use electricity to make heat. I mean, it's very inefficient, and scrambled to go to natural gas. And the standard where natural gas service is available for residential use and for commercial use as well is to use natural gas for heat and an air conditioner for cooling, because it's more efficient than a heat pump.
Oh, it clearly is. Yeah. Heat pumps, and so they say, well, now the next generation heat pump is better. Well, let's talk supply chain issues.
Mm.
You know, we got supply chain issues, but as much as anything, we have HVAC systems that aren't capable of being converted. If you're going to talk HVAC system, then you're going to talk about an entire ducting system and fresh air return system, and a lot of these houses just can't be done. And so we're going to say we're going to make commercial people do it. Well, I heard today of a restaurant owner who's got 20 restaurants. I mean, so he's going to have to convert his fast burning or his quick heat, quick response gas to electric, which you turn it on and you wait 10 minutes and then you see if it's getting warm yet. I mean, it just does not make sense.
Yeah, there was a guy that came on one of the national news cable networks and did an interview. I think it might have been Tucker Carlson or something. Interviewed a guy who said, here's the problem with gas versus electricity when you're preparing food in a restaurant. Electricity, you are able to prepare 40% less food in the same amount of time. And your electric bill goes up by a factor of 6 because it's much more.
I've not heard that, but yeah, that it doesn't surprise me. I converted my home to a propane because I don't have natural gas water heater, and I got a tankless water heater. It does 11 gallons a minute of 125 degree water forever.
Yeah,
I've never run out of hot water. I mean, and it's pretty darn efficient. My power bill went down by a significant amount when I got rid of my electric water heater, and I have hotter water, and I never run out of hot water.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. They're amazing, and 2 people can take showers at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And it
Never been an
matter.
issue. Yeah. So that's what we need to do. We need to look at the whole fuel source and do that. We can't be making these poor decisions that aren't doable. They're just not able to be done.
Well, so this bill, if people want to figure out how to help support it, they should contact their legislators, right? So they can go to Oregon legislature.gov, I believe, and they can find their representative there or senator and let them know what would be the best thing for them to say, do you think, to make sure they should mention the bill, right? SB.
Mention the bill number and say, I'm very concerned with the current direction the state is going, because there was an active part in this. There was a bill in the Senate last February that I raised enough ruckus about, and it was sent to a task force afterwards, which it's a nice way of saying it was put to bed or put to death. But then we had 26 stinking task force meetings over the course of the rest of the year. And there's a hard move afoot by major urban areas and some legislators that represent those to bring something back like this to eliminate natural gas as a fuel source. And so people need to say they're concerned with that. I'm vaguely concerned because we don't have enough transmission capability. We don't have enough generation capability to support it. And we have supply chain issues. And if it's not broken, why are we trying to fix something? And this is not a broken deal.
There was also another factor that I think can't be underestimated or can't be overestimated, which is that the gas infrastructure is underground. So when you've had power getting knocked out all over the place, sometimes the only way you have to heat a place or cook food is
fire.
The question I would ask, and I didn't live here 2 years ago or even last year when it occurred, when you had the ice storm and power's out for 4 or 5 days.
Yep.
How's your electric furnace doing? How's the people with the propane or natural gas? They have heat. They can turn on their fireplace and have heat.
And they're working on renewable natural gas, and they're working on hydrogen to go through that same infrastructure. And so it's almost like they want to kill off natural gas before it has a chance to get to that stage where that infrastructure can be used, because it's almost an ideology. It doesn't make logical sense.
There's no sense at all. And and I've seen, the renewable natural gas. That's where we need to be. We need to be in renewable diesel, renewable natural gas. But more importantly, the reason I support keeping natural gas in our system is the infrastructure that's there. I mean, I think in 10 years, I don't know, maybe 20, but I think we're going to be converting to hydrogen, some other sources. We need the infrastructure there now, at least to make that conversion, and the distribution networks part of it. I mean, but the natural gas folks are making it cleaner. The technology, a 10-year-old natural gas furnace can't even compare to it. I mean, you go from 80% to 96 or 97%. That's pretty darn efficient. I mean, the industry is policing itself, and what we should do is maybe help folks. It's got a 20-year-old system, help them convert to something newer with state incentives, for low-income folks. But certainly, the industrial and the commercial side, we just need to help them update their equipment and stay with the best source available.
So there was one other bill I wanted to mention. I know you got to get going. You've had a long day. Of course, the first day of the legislative session, which I'm sure is like just opening your mouth and saying, aim the fire hose at me. I'm ready, right? And
well, the day started at 6, and it's been going pretty busy all day long. But, I signed up for this, so I'm not going to whine about that. But
well, and we appreciate you being there and representing all of us, including your district, but also helping advance bills that are impactful for everyone. And here's one. The folks at Common Sense for Oregon tipped me off to this, and there is it's an LC, so I don't know if when it reaches a bill stage here, but it addresses retail theft. And that was one that I guess you're working on with, is it Kevin Mannix?
It is. And, and I met with Representative Mannix now. He was, wannabe in November. And he said, I have some stuff. I don't want to wait till I'm sworn in to introduce legislation. Could I share some with you, and will you help me? And I said, absolutely, because the man's a genius. I mean, he really is. And he has, and, all of his customers are talking about how the theft folks are getting a slap in the wrist at best, and he's trying to strengthen that up a little bit. I haven't seen it come out yet. I seen when it went in the request. I haven't seen it come out yet. But people have to be held accountable for their actions, and the slap on the wrist is not accountable for their actions, because these retailers, they're raising prices like crazy to make up for it.
Yeah, some of them have actually had to close their doors. There was a Nike store downtown that had to close for like a week because they were just getting right. It was dangerous for the employees who can't do anything about it. Yep. They're not even allowed.
That's exactly right. And you feel sorry for those folks. I had someone tell me the other day they went to a Target on Lancaster, and they're down to like 15 shopping carts. They lose 10 or 12 a day. People are stealing their darn shopping carts. I don't know what they're doing with the shopping. So,
this LC, two things stood out to me about it. It actually establishes a more refined statute for retail theft in the second degree. It establishes one in the first degree, and it kind of ups the maximum that somebody can get. And then it creates the crime of aggravated retail theft, punishable by a maximum of 5 years imprisonment, 120 days, and requires the court to impose a mandatory sentence of 12 months imprisonment.
And there's some timelines there, so it has to move fairly fast.
Yeah.
The speedy trial component. So, and it's back to people have to be accountable for their actions. So, and that's what's trying to drive would drive it as much as anything. But yeah.
Although, those of us that stop by the cash register on their way out of a store are really getting tired of paying for the people who don't.
Exactly
because
right.
We are paying for all of it, and both in inconvenience with merchandise locked up behind gates and just the cost.
Yep, absolutely. That's exactly right, David. I mean, it's very frustrating when you go in there and you have to get somebody to open up a case to hand you a pocket knife or to hand you about anything at all that's got any value, and then to go out, you got to go through a system to actually get it out to your car. I mean, it's just it's just wrong. We got to hold people accountable. Hopefully that'll slow it down.
Well, and I think this is converging into something that looks more like organized crime. I know the arrests that have been taking place in the Portland metro area have been organized teams of people going and hitting multiple different places in a coordinated fashion. And if they do that for long enough, it's just like the catalytic converter theft, guys. It becomes like almost like a corporation.
Oh yeah, it's
operating.
big business. So
Well,
yeah, I mean, so that was Representative Manick's intent, and I supported that, and I'll help him where I could.
Well, if there's more news on that, of course, we'll be very interested because we want to make sure people know about that and can also voice to their representatives.
Absolutely,
Some of whom have said they've had enough of
let the
crime.
representatives know.
Yes.
Say, I support this measure, or I support this, and tell them why. Say, I am in your district, and you are my representative or my senator. So.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us here. I know it was kind of on short notice, but this is some really important things that you're advancing here. And I know we could probably go and talk about a whole range of other things. Everyone should check out the article you and Representative Mark Owens were featured in, talking about the approach to this session and what's going on with your districts. I know there's a whole range of things that also rural Oregon, really hasn't been properly treated by Salem and the Portland metro area, and you cite some of these in there. So we'd love to have you back on and talk about some of these more.
And Kevin, I'd be happy to do that. I mean, I'm generally here. I mean, I'm not like 88 of my colleagues. I mean, I don't get to go home on the weekends because it's a 7.5-hour drive. I'm not whining. It was that far when I took the job. So, but I work for specifically the 140,000 people in my district, but I work for all of Oregonians. And I mean, so I'll be happy to address and answer those questions.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time today to join us, and good luck with everything else in the session. We'll stay in touch, and if there's something that we need to get the word out about, we will really get you on as soon as possible.
Absolutely. You've got my contact information. Give me a holler. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you both.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Senator.
Bye-bye.
And thanks everyone for watching here, the captive audience. Please share this show with everyone you can. There's a lot of folks that need to hear this information. We're getting into the heat of the legislative session, and we're going to bring you stuff that you really need to be aware of so that you can respond and make your voice heard. Because we actually have seen that even just dozens of people speaking out on something gets someone's attention who's a state legislator. It puts it on their radar, and they start to notice that people care, because the politics doesn't end when the campaign and the election ends, although that seems to go on forever too. It really just begins once we get to the point that our elected representatives start trying to govern, and they need to hear from us as much as possible. David, any last words of wisdom to add to folks here?
Yeah, keep your eye on the legislature. No one's safe when the legislature is in session. Particularly those your bills. They are not safe.
That's right. Well, thanks for joining me here tonight, David. Thanks everyone for watching. We will see you tomorrow night. It should be, I think, Don and David are going to be on Captive Audience tomorrow night, and we'll have, I'm sure, a great deal more news to cover from the legislature and beyond as things develop in Washington, D.C. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll talk to you here in the coming days on Captive Audience. Good night.